Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back here and currently recording this on Thursday night. Just got back home from work. And, well, it's official. Mike McCarthy is now head coach officially of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had his introductory presser the other day. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to make this. I didn't want to review this or provide my commentary on it because I think I made that quite clear based on the two videos that I put out on it over the weekend. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, you know what? I'll do it. I'll come on here and listen to what McCarthy has to say. Well, not listen because I already heard it when it came out the other day. But I'll review it and listen to what excuse me, what he has to say and what the two ass clowns on either side of him have to say in the introductory press, and I'll give you my commentary on it. So yeah, I have it pulled up right here, and I don't know how long this is going to be, but I'm not going to pick out every single thing that he said. At least I'll try not to, but basically anything that stands out to me, I'll comment on it. But yeah, let's get on to it. This is the Mike McCarthy introductory press conference.
All right, good afternoon. Thanks everybody for being with us on this special occasion. It may be irrelevant to some of you, but I like the fact that today is my grandfather's birthday.
What a douchebag, man. Like, seriously? What a way to bring up that it's the Chiefs' birthday, man. Like, we don't care that it's the founder of this franchise's birthday. We don't care about that. You're just gonna passive aggressively just come on here and bring it up like that. Like, how careless do you think this fan base is? You know, we don't care that it's your grandfather's birthday. Yeah, I guess that's why, basically everywhere I looked on social media, be it the Facebook page, Pittsburgh News, you know, KDKA, 93.7 The Fan, basically every social media thing or every social media page that you're involved in, I've seen it be brought up, and I've seen fans, and not even Steeler fans, but fans outside this fan base wish the Chief a happy birthday, right? But we don't care that it's his birthday, right? Dude, seriously, go fuck yourself.
And he would have loved the fact that we're hiring a guy from Greenfield to be our coach. So, but having said that, him being from Greenfield had little to do with our decision here.
Oh, it had little to do with it. Yeah. Do you guys believe anything that this guy says anymore? Okay, the fact that he has to say that Greenfield had little to do, him being from Greenfield had little to do with the hire, it just means that it was the main reason that he was hired, okay? Don't believe anything this clown says. All right? Like, if it had little to do with it, why even bring it up? If it had little to do with it, why not let McCarthy be the one bring it up? Why do you have to bring it up? Just like in your statement, the day that Tomlin stepped down, you put extra emphasis on, we are so we are so impressed and amazed by him not having a losing season in the 19 years that he was here, and that's never going to be duplicated ever again by another head coach. Yeah, that just shows you the type of guy that Art Rooney II is and the type of owner that he is. Bottom line, before winning.
Here, it's really great to be able to hire somebody who has such a tremendous winning track record and won everywhere he's been. And
a winning track record wherever he's been. and a tremendous, and he's won wherever he's been. You're talking about a guy who started off with the New Orleans Saints in the early well, if you want to go back further, we can go back to the 90s 49ers, the early 90s 49ers went, or not the 49ers, I'm sorry, the Chiefs, okay, the Kansas City Chiefs, when they had Joe Montana, who was already an established Hall of Famer, right? And people want to say that McCarthy developed him, right? Even though, Joe Montana won 4 Super Bowls with the 49ers well before that, and he went over to Kansas City, and they were, the Chiefs were a very good team back then, not going to lie, but they had really good coaching. They had a really good roster as well, and they had Joe Montana, who was an established winner there. Okay, so he had little to do with that. Then he went on over to Green Bay, where they had a mediocre season in 1999. He was the QB coach there. But he also had Brett Favre, who was one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the NFL at that particular time. After that, he was the Saints offensive coordinator, where he was with his buddy and pal Omar Khan, and the Saints were never really any good down there either. Went to the 49ers offensive coordinator after that. San Francisco was trash in '05. And then he became head coach of the Packers, where he still had Brett Favre, playing, playing at a pretty good level at that still too. He was an MVP frontrunner in '07, but the only reason Tom Brady didn't win it unanimously in '07 is because Brett Favre got some votes, but Aaron Rodgers comes along, and yeah, the Packers go ahead and win the Super Bowl. But what has Mike McCarthy done since then? 6 playoff losses every time they've been in the playoffs since then. He went 5-6 after winning Super Bowl 45 with the Green Bay Packers. That's not really a winning track record. Gee, that really sounds like another coach who gets called having a winning track record and having, underwhelming playoff success, right? Then he goes to Dallas and he goes 1-3 in the playoffs there. And like I said, the only playoff win that he got was against a team with a losing record who won their division by complete default. And the most recent playoff game that he was in, he got beat up by his old team in Green Bay, where the final was 48-32, but don't let that score fool you. The Packers were up by 32 points in the fourth quarter, and Dallas got a bunch of garbage time points to make the score look more respectable. So, yeah, I don't consider that a winning track record. I consider that a very underwhelming track record with players and quarterbacks that were already there to benefit him even more. That's a swing and a miss right there.
So it gives us great confidence to welcome Mike. And so I am happy to introduce Mike McCarthy, the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike.
All right, here we go. Thank you, Art. I think I thought at least be able to get started. Oftentimes coaches and players, you put on new team colors, and it takes a minute to feel comfortable in those new colors. But to be blessed beyond any measure, one day to put on the colors you wore since you brought home.
Okay, so here's the one thing that I will give McCarthy credit for. And if you saw my community post the other day, you know what I'm talking about here, okay? I will give him credit. He does genuinely want to be here. Like, you can't fake those emotions right there, You can tell that this job means the world to him. Being the head coach of the childhood team that he grew up being a fan of in his hometown, where he's at in his life right now, you can't, you can't come on here and fake that. Like, that's a genuine, authentic reaction right there. So That is one thing that I will give McCarthy credit for right there, is that he wants to be here. However, that being said, you have to follow up with that. You have to go out there and live up to those emotions that you're showing right now with how much this means to you and how touched that you are and how grateful and honored that you are of being head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay? The emotion is there. The appreciation and the excitement is there. Show that on the field as well, Mike.
Mike, Tim Benz over here from Trib Live. Question, just a football one for you. I'm not asking this from any other perspective except your own personal preference. In your best case scenario, do you want Aaron Rodgers back as your quarterback next year?
This ought to be good.
That's nice the way he asked that, right? That was slick. But I mean, definitely. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't. But I think just like anything, knowing Aaron long enough, going through seasons, I think when players, to see Mel Blunt here, I mean, when guys are up at that stage of their career, they need to step away and decompress. I think that's very important. The game is so emotional, what these men commit to and what they put into it. I think that time away is important, and I have spoken to Aaron, and so that's really where we are there. But I was able to sit back and watch the games. I watched most of the Pittsburgh games on TV.
Oh, you watched most of the Pittsburgh games on TV, did you? Kind of like how when you first got hired by the Cowboys back in 2020, you basically told Jerry Jones and you told all of the Dallas media basically that you watched every single play that the Dallas Cowboys took the year before, and then moments later you admitted to lying about it so you'd get a better chance of getting the job in Dallas. Yeah, this guy openly admitted to lying, to saying that he paid close attention to the Cowboys the season before, and now he just comes over here to Pittsburgh and says that he watched all the Pittsburgh games. Mike, if you watched all the Steeler games from not even this past season, okay? If I really wanted to, I could go as far back to about 2019 or so. But for the sake of this video, I'm only going to focus on the previous 3 seasons. Okay? So from 2023 onward. From 2023 until now. All right? 2023. The Steelers had, if this thing would load here. Okay. So in 2023, the Steelers had the 28th ranked offense in points scored. Passing offense, the Steelers were 25th. In rush offense, the Steelers were rush offense. The Steelers were, I can't even find them. Oh, here they are. Okay, so a respectable 13th in rushing offense, so not too bad right there, but when you look at the other teams that are ahead of us and the other teams that are below us, can you really say it's all that impressive? Okay? So the only saving grace that the Steelers have had during that time is that they've had a respectable defense during that time. So you'd think things would be better in 2024 when the Steelers get a new offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith and you bring in a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson, right? You'd think things would get better. Well, not really. 2024, the Steelers are 16th in points scored on offense, which, yes, is a massive catapult from where they were the year before, literally being bottom 5 in that category. But still, 16th is middle of the pack. It's literally right in the middle. You're 16th. Rush offense, Steelers balloon up a little bit to 11th. So they're almost a top 10 rushing offense that year. But still, a lot of other teams that run the ball more efficiently than the Steelers are in the top 10. Okay? So as far and then finally scoring offense, the Steelers were actually a top 10 offense in scoring offense at 8th. Okay, so 2024 was an upgrade, but with the way that the season ended and with the play calling that took place there, it still indicates that they're a very mediocre offense in 2024. And then finally, this past season with offense, still with Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator. All right, the Steelers are 15th in points scored on offense. Okay, again, not much of a movement from where they were the year before at 16th. They only moved up one place. That's still mediocre as far as points scored on offense. Rush offense, the Steelers, you're going to love this one. Rush offense, Steelers were 26th. 26th in rush offense with adding Kenneth Walker to the backfield, and now Najee Harris goes to the Chargers in the offseason, and Jalen Warren is supposed to be getting RB1 duties, and the Steelers fall all the way down to 26th as far as rush offense goes. So that's a massive disappointment right there. And then finally, on scoring offense, the Steelers were 17th. So this is a very below average offense, to put it lightly, that the Steelers have been having over the past 3 seasons when, like I said, if I really wanted to, I could go back to 2019, but I'll do the last 3 seasons just for the sake of the video. So, Mike, if you watched all the Pittsburgh games this year, Aaron Rodgers would be the last guy that you would want as your quarterback right now, and you would know that this team needs either Will Howard to get his opportunity on the field, since you're this guy who can develop quarterbacks apparently, or, God forbid if the Steelers have a losing season this year, which is what Art Rooney II is terrified of, you draft a quarterback next spring, which at this point, I don't trust either one of these guys to make those moves, all right? But you watch all the Pittsburgh games, we'll see how much you watched it this season.
Rich Walsh, KDK TV. Mike, credentials aside, did you feel like you had to sell yourself in that interview? And was there any answer or story that you told that maybe helped get you the job?
Well,
Share with us?
I think, every time you had a chance to interview, I've always enjoyed the interview process. Frankly, you have, was on 3 this year, had a number in 19, and really didn't have many before that, frankly. I think anytime, coaches and players have a chance to talk football, sit down and cross the table and, have a chance to sit down and talk to Art Rooney, about the game, the history, especially growing up here and being a huge Steeler fan as a kid. And
there's your answer right there. He was asked if he really had to sell himself in the interview to Art Rooney II. Well, Mike, there's your answer right there. Okay? All you have to say to Art Rooney II and or Omar Khan is this. I'm from Greenfield, Pennsylvania, and I grew up a massive Pittsburgh Steelers fan when I was a kid, and it's always been my lifelong dream to be the head coach of this team. There's your answer right there. That's all you got to say. You heard Art Rooney II himself say in the opening statement that Greenfield had little to do with it. We all know that's a bunch of horse shit. So there's your answer right there.
understand, I mean, it's a great opportunity. So I'm filibustering here because I'm trying to think of a good story to give you, but I don't think there was one that knocked it out of the park. But no, I just I enjoyed those conversations, and I know this no different than I would think in any industry. You look for fit. I'm in the process of putting together a coaching staff, and there's so many outstanding coaches.
You're in the process of putting together a coaching staff. As I speak here today, the Steelers are set to hire Patrick Graham as the defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So yeah, good news, bad news here. Terrell Austin is finally out of here as defensive coordinator. So that's the good news. Bad news is we're replacing him with Patrick Graham, who has never had even a top 12 defense in his entire time as being defensive coordinator for both the New York Giants and most recently the Las Vegas Raiders. Never had a top 12 defense. The highest ranked defense that Patrick Graham had was 16th. And he's coming here with the most expensive defense in the league, a defense that is hailed as one of the best defenses in the entire NFL, and a defense that is coming off allowing Christian Kirk to carve us up like Chris Hogan did in 2016. This is what I'm most concerned about with this hire here, is what is Mike McCarthy's philosophy as far as the offense goes and who he's going to bring in here as far as the coordinators go. And so far, I don't like the Patrick Graham. I don't like the Patrick Graham hire. I don't like it. Sure, you can give him the benefit of the doubt by saying, well, who did he have in New York? Who did he have with Vegas other than Max Crosby? You can give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. But still, when your defenses are consistently being ranked mid to bottom tier, it's worth bringing up. Now, to be fair to McCarthy, he may know a thing or two about offensive coordinators, all right? Because he opted, all right? Notice that keyword there. He opted to keep Kellen Moore in Dallas for 2020 and 2022, or 2020 through 2022. But Kellen Moore was already a year removed from being the Cowboys' offensive coordinator when Mike McCarthy was hired by the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy did not bring Kellen Moore down in Dallas. He was the OC for the first 3 years of Mike McCarthy's career in Dallas. And then Mike McCarthy himself called the offense for the final 2 years that he was in Dallas. So, yes, in McCarthy's defense, he may know something about bringing in an offensive coordinator, which is why I have a little bit more, if you want to call it hope, go ahead. I have a little bit more quote-unquote hope that he can bring in a good OC for the Steelers, seeing now that Arthur Smith is down in Ohio State. But still, he did not bring Kellen Moore in Dallas. He was already there. And what happened when Kellen Moore took the Chargers offensive coordinator job, and then he eventually went to Philadelphia where he won a Super Bowl with the Eagles in 2024? Cowboys offense solely under him. And yes, Dallas's offense was good, but over here in Pittsburgh, he doesn't have the star players that the Cowboys had. He doesn't have like the breakout players and the big splash players that the Cowboys have, or that the Cowboys had down there. Dak Prescott the year before had the best season of his career in Dallas, and then CeeDee Lamb comes along the way. So, yeah, I can't, there's no way you can say that Mike McCarthy developed Dak. We all knew, even though Dak Prescott is far from being an elite quarterback, he is still a good quarterback. But to say that Mike McCarthy developed him is a bunch of BS. And everyone knows that. So, if you're putting together a coaching staff for this organization, then you better do a freaking A+ job on that, Mike, because so far you're not off to a good start with Patrick Graham.
Bo Marchant with College of Pro. Michael, this question's for you.
Yeah. So we can see. I got him. Yep.
This question's for you. In terms of absent of being a Pittsburgh guy yourself, but when you looked at the roster specifically, what attracted you most to the roster, and what are you happiest with in terms of the roster?
Oh, I mean, I love the roster, and I think it's Omar's turn to talk here, but I think it's a roster that, is fluid. And what I mean by that, the first thing I always look for, I know in my head coaching years, how many players do we have returning on contract? Or we had 52, we had 61, 64, because frankly, I mean, the draft's really important. Veteran free agency is important. But that group of men in these offseasons.
Oh, God. Group of men. Oh, man. Who does that remind you of when he says a phrase like group of men? Who does that remind you of? Here's a hint. He's a head coach, and his first name is also Mike. But, yeah, I paused it for another reason, though. Did he just say that the roster is fluid? He really said the roster is fluid. Maybe there are some parts to the roster that are, quote, fluid, but in order for a roster to be fluid, they have to be consistent and they have to be able to make plays on a dime. All right? And when you see stuff like Aaron Rodgers throwing screen passes behind the line of scrimmage to Jonnu Smith, where the Steelers are setting themselves up for 3rd and long situations. You see Aaron Rodgers get strip sacked on a bull rush by the Texans by Sheldon Rankins, where Isaac Samalo got pancaked in the process by it, that led to a fumble 6 touchdown by Houston. When you see DK Metcalf drop passes that are right in his hands, that gives the Steelers at the very least an easy first down and sets them up in opponent territory. When you see the run game, whether it be Warren or Gainwell, Gainwell. I don't know why I'm thinking of Kenneth Walker, but when you see the run game with Warren and Gainwell trying to make big purse plays and trying to pick up yards per carry, and the O-line isn't doing much for them, and you don't see the Steelers attack in the middle of the field and stepping away from what works with their tight ends, I'm sorry, I don't know how you can call that a fluid team. It's a very inconsistent team that relies solely on big splash plays on offense to get the needle moving. That's not a fluid team.
And programs, particularly just being older, being in the league, that time you have together, those men will move the needle more, in my opinion, more than anybody else. And it's a great group of men, just based off the feedback that, we all talk to each other. And so I'm really looking forward to moving the needle with those guys. And definitely we'll add through free agency, we'll add through the draft. But, it's like I said, Mike Tomlin, and Omar, they've left me a lot to work with. So I feel good about the direction. I'm really excited about the defense. Great seeing Alex here, because defense wins championships. And the history of the Steelers defense and staying with the 3-4 is important. As far as the origin of it, and that's something we have to build off. I've been a head coach 18 years. I've had one top 5 defense.
Hey, would you look at that? A head coach named Mike entering the Pittsburgh Steelers, entering season number 19 as head coach. Again, who does that remind you of? But yeah, this dude has only had one top 5 defense his entire career. And the last time the Steelers had a top 5 defense statistically was 2020. One top 5 defense in 18 years as a head coach. And the one time that you had a top 5 defense, you won the Super Bowl. Well, Mike, if you're looking for a top 5 defense here, you're going to be greatly disappointed. I'm telling you that right now. All right? Because statistically, this should be a top 3 defense. When you look at the roster on this team, this should be a top 3 defense. So, in your case, Mike, like I said a little bit ago, bringing in Patrick Graham, I know that Patrick Graham, worked for you in the past, and I know that you and him may still have a little bit of chemistry with each other, but Patrick Graham is not the coordinator that this defense needs.
Mike Brook Pryor, ESPN. The last three guys that had this job were in it for 19 years, 15 years, 23 years. You're a little bit more advanced in your career than they were when they took over, but how long do you see yourself continuing to coach? What do you kind of view this timeline as?
Here's your answer right here. I'm going to be 75 years old when I retire. I'm going to go down the Bill Belichick route.
Lisa Varley from Steelers.com. Mike, I wanted to ask you, what was that like after you got the phone call from the Steelers to be able to call your parents and share that news with them?
See, no, it's not fair, Teresa. Yes, no, it was.
Look, I don't mean to nitpick here or anything, but these questions so far are so basic. It's like, what attracted you most to the roster? What was it like with your family? How did your parents take the news? How did your kids Look, man, like I said, I don't mean to nitpick or anything, and you can call this nitpicking if you want. I don't give a crap, but can these people ask him a little bit more advanced questions, please and thank you?
It was a great phone call. I couldn't get through the introduction, so I think you know how that went. So.
Hey, Mike, Will Graves with the AP. Why did you still want to coach? What is it about this profession, that certainly you have great credentials, have coached a good long time. Some guys.
Once again, I'm sorry to keep nitpicking, but what is with these stupid basic questions? Like, why there's another one right there. Why do you still want to coach? I'm saving it. Can this guy just get a couple more quote unquote grown up questions about, the Steelers and, the direction of this team going forward? Can we please get more of that?
Mike, Ashley Leotis here with WTA Channel 4 here in Pittsburgh. The playoff win drought has been a big topic of conversation here the last
Now we're talking.
few years. When you look back at the last 10 years, what would you do differently? What do you think the biggest change needs to be right now moving forward into this era with you?
Honestly, I don't think you can really look at it that way. Every season's different. Every team you coach is a bit different. Your beliefs and, your standards and the culture you're trying to create, you're trying to move that forward. The most important thing about playoff football is staying in the playoffs. We're not trying to get to the playoffs and doing the things to stay in the playoffs. Playoff footballs are the hardest games to win each and every year. I mean, earlier we talked about trends. I think that, the trends of the fourth quarter changes is something that, I know I've been watching, the momentum shifts and so forth. Because, in a lot of ways, when I look at the training of the team, especially the way the off-season programs is orchestrated, you almost have to re-engineer how you want your team to train. And what I'm talking about is you need to put more time and energy into the end of the game. Because, you look at the playoffs, because it's about winning the championship. It's not about getting to the playoffs and winning one game. It's about bringing the trophy home, and that'll always be the goal. So I think the trends of the playoff football. I think there's been one game this year that didn't come down to the last series, and the whole playoff outcome, and that trend has been in place for years. So there's not too many games in a playoff that does not come down to the 2-minute drill. And then, as I already stated, the fourth quarter momentum swings this year have been at a record pace. So that's what I pay attention to, and because we all have the same amount of time to train the team. The players, have the same amount of time to put it into when we're able to work as a team. But where are you spending that time? So that's really my approach to how I would attack the playoffs.
Okay, so with this question, this was the number one question that caught my attention when I first listened to the introductory press conference, okay? And this is actually my third time listening to this question. Because the first time I heard this question, I was on break at work, and my break was almost done with, so I wasn't like fully engaged with hearing his answer for it. And then later that night, when I listened to it for the second time, YouTube was just being stupid and it randomly logged me off of my channel. And I didn't remember exactly where the question was being asked, so I figured I would just rewatch this and do it again, which is what I said at the beginning of this video. Now that I have a third chance to listen to this question and listen to this answer, I can take away pretty much that Mike acknowledges that when you get to the playoffs, the goal is to go far, and ultimately his mindset is to win the Super Bowl, right? Not just to win one playoff game, and not just to say, "Oh, well, at least we made the playoffs," you know. So he has the right mindset right there. I'll give him credit for that. His goal is to win a championship. However, the last time this dude won a championship was 15 years ago. And unless this guy knows for a fact that he can fully adjust in today's NFL, which is what Art II said many times in his statement of when Mike McCarthy got hired here, then you better know for a fact that if you're going to get Will Howard in his second season here, his first real chance at being a starter, and a way over the hill Aaron Rodgers, you better know for a fact that you can work with them. You better know for a fact that you can work with this run game, because in your own words, Mike, the quarterback position is no different than all the other positions, right? So it's no different than the offensive line. It's no different than the wide receivers. It's no different than the tight ends, right? So you better know for a fact that you can work well with what you have at quarterback and any other position, right? So at least you acknowledge that it's not about going one and done, or about saying, well, we made it to the divisional, we made it to the AFC Championship. And as far as what you would do differently to have the Steelers win a playoff game in the last decade, he's saying that it's all about momentum shifts, and he's saying that it's all about making in-game adjustments in like the second half or the fourth quarter, or mixing up your play calling and, you know, utilizing your players on offense to get that correct momentum shift or eliminate any momentum shift that your opponent may have, right? Well, then maybe you wouldn't do stupid stuff like, oh, I don't know, run a quarterback draw with an immobile quarterback when in your final dying seconds of the game, when you need a big chunk play, or throw a little crosser across the middle against one of the top ranked defenses in the league with a running clock, or when you're going to get the ball and you're anticipating an onside kick with your opponent. You know, you don't have a blocker on the hands team come up and try to recover the onside kick, which gives your opponent more momentum, right? Or when you have a great drive going and you're leading in the game, and you know that your defense is getting stops, and you're stopped at the goal line, that you go for it instead of kicking the field goal. You notice all these games that I'm bringing up from McCarthy, his in my opinion, his biggest playoff failures as a head coach. 2014 NFC Championship game, where he elected to kick a field goal a couple of times against the Seahawks when Russell Wilson was turning the ball over and the offense wasn't moving the needle, and Green Bay, while not in total control of the game, still had the lead, and they elected to play it safe and kick a field goal instead of go for it on fourth down. And it's like, you know, even if you don't get the fourth down, even if you don't convert the fourth down, deep in Seattle territory, guess what? You're pinning them back 90 plus yards to where they need to drive the length of the field to go and score a touchdown, all right? So it's like, just stop coaching like a wimp and be aggressive, all right? And then I think it was 2021 and 2022, if I'm not mistaken, where the Cowboys had the back-to-back playoff games against the 49ers in consecutive years, right? The quarterback draw with Dak Prescott. I mean, look, Dak Prescott at that point of his career was probably a little bit more mobile than Aaron Rodgers was now in his career. Okay, but it's a dumb play call when you're trying to go up against the best defense, one of the best defenses in the league, and you need to keep the clock moving and eliminate any chance of San Francisco stealing the game. A quarterback draw in that scenario, when you're out of timeouts, and then that little crosser across the middle of the field against them the next year, and he immediately gets decked on the play. I mean, is this the kind of re-engineering and the adjustments that we're going to be anticipating when Mike McCarthy comes here, should the Steelers make the playoffs? It doesn't give me a good gut feeling right there. Again, I think it's just one of those answers that he's just saying to make it sound good and to appease the media and the fans.
McAfee Show. You've had great success over the years developing quarterbacks, but you're taking over an organization here wants to win now. How do you balance winning now and finding that next franchise quarterback?
Well, I think you're always developing the quarterback, and been blessed to have great starters. Particularly, the last one, the Dak Prescott, Aaron and Green Bay Brett, but we've always approached it as the quarterback.
All QBs that were there before you came there, Mike. Don't forget to say that. They were all there before you were.
Room, and because that second quarterback, a third quarterback, they need to emulate the starter because that starter is dictating the rhythm and the timing and the precision with the perimeter guys. So I'm excited where I'm going with this. I'm really excited about Will Howard. I think he's someone that I thought he really came on there at Ohio State. I'm anxious to work with him. So I mean, it'd be great to have Aaron back, but Will and Mason, I'm really excited to get started with those guys.
Mike, Chris Adamski, Tribune Review, TribLive.com. Do you plan on calling the plays, and what's your timetable for offensive coordinator and any coaching staff? And are those going to be people that you're familiar with from your past or around the league?
I guess apparently his timetable with finding coordinators is within the next 24 hours or so, because the day after this presser, Patrick Graham gets hired. Like I said a bit ago, I don't need to reiterate how I feel about that hire.
Yeah, definitely. I will call the plays on offense, and so obviously we'll run the offense.
Well, that was a given. I mean, we all knew that Mike was going to be calling the offense here because that's his. That's who he is. He's an offensive coach. Like, I'm not concerned about him finding an offensive coordinator. I'm concerned about how he handles the defensive coordinator. Okay, basically, we got a new head coach and a new offensive coordinator. Okay, so far, not a good start as far as the defensive coordinator goes. Patrick Graham.
But these coaching staff, it's a bigger challenge each and every year. And I just think there's more moving parts to it. But it's been very fluid the last 48 hours. So.
Alan Saunders from Pittsburgh Sports Now. I'd like to ask Omar and Art, a lot of the candidates you interviewed were younger coaches, defensive backgrounds. Did you come into this thinking that was maybe something you were going to do? And what was it about Mike that changed your mind maybe or stood out to you compared to some of those younger defensive guys?
We came into this wanting to hire the best coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So
You wanted to hire the best coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you wanted to hire the best coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Art, you wouldn't hire this guy. All right? We know this dude's track record when it comes to the playoffs, all right? People like to shit on Mike Tomlin for not being able to win a playoff game. Well, guess what? Mike McCarthy is literally no different than he is outside of 3 extra playoff wins. If you wanted to hire the right coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you'd follow suit with what your pappy did back in the day with hiring a younger coach who was in his mid to late 30s. You know, kind of like what you did with Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. You immediately showed interest in Chris Shula and Nate Scheelhaus almost immediately after Tomlin stepped down. And you're just going to sit there now and say that Mike McCarthy, because of his advanced years in the NFL, with him being 62 years old at the time of this presser, that he was the best option for the Steelers. A team that needs to rebuild and re-gut everything. You're bringing in Mike McCarthy, a 62-year-old head coach, and not take a gamble on one of the younger coaches in the younger league nowadays in the NFL. This is the best option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, this guy, this dude is not an owner. He's not an owner. He's a politician, okay? He just says stuff that the fans in the media want to hear because it sounds good. And he does the complete opposite of what he said he was going to do. This team is not in win now mode. If they were in win now mode, they wouldn't keep getting blown out of the water in the playoffs, and they wouldn't keep backdooring their way into the playoffs. You know, this was literally the first time in 8 years that the Steelers didn't backdoor their way into the playoffs, but that doesn't take away from all the other times they did it in recent years. All right? This team is not in win now mode. They shouldn't be balancing on winning now and developing a quarterback. They need to be rebuilding and taking a gamble on a younger quarterback. So for him to say that Mike McCarthy was the best option for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that is one of the stupidest statements I've ever heard anyone say about anything.
We did not say, you know, we're trying to hire a young defensive coordinator or, you know, offensive guy. You know, we had an open mind about it, I think, and really just, like I said, want to make sure we found the best coach. And
oh, you had an open mind about it, did you? Give me another reason other than him being from Greenfield, PA, and this fallacy that he has a great winning track record, that he was going to be head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Give me another reason. Oh, that's right, you can't.
And, you know, we were able to interview some great coaches, so I won't say it was.
Interview some great coaches. What's your definition of some? What's your definition of the word some? Literally all you did was bring in Anthony Weaver and Brian Flores in for interviews, in-person interviews, when before you were showing interest in Chris Shula, Nate Scheelhaus, Clay Kubiak, you know, those guys. You were showing interest in them, and yet all you did was you took your 2 minority candidates, brought them in, interviewed them, and then the second you even considered Mike McCarthy before that, you knew he was going to be your guy automatically. So all you did was just satisfy the Rooney Rule, and then you gave Mike a call and you're like, hey, Mike, come on over. You're the new head coach of the Steelers. That's not an extensive search. That's not interviewing some coaches. That's just doing the bare minimum, just like with what you did with Arthur Smith last year, and you know it.
It's an easy decision, but I would say at the end of the day it was an obvious decision for us.
Oh, it was an obvious decision. Well, no shit. Thank you for confirming what we already knew.
That Mike was the guy for the job.
Oh. Yeah, just to echo what Art said, we were very open, not minded.
Yeah, echo what Art says. You're his puppet. That's why you're going to echo him.
Going into this and interviewed really an awesome group of candidates. And
once again, you did not interview an awesome group of candidates, Omar. You guys only brought in 2 people in person to satisfy the Rooney Rule and then just went with Mike McCarthy. That's not an extensive search, and that's not an awesome group of candidates. If you said that you were interviewing an awesome group of candidates, here's what you would have done. You would have interviewed those 2 guys, then brought in Mike McCarthy. Or no, wait, okay, so you interviewed Flores first, then Mike McCarthy, then Anthony Weaver. And like, here's the thing about it, okay? If you really wanted Mike McCarthy and you knew right from the jump that he was going to be the guy, or you were at least certain that he was going to be the guy, why not bring Chris Shula and Nate Scheelhausen in person? And then if you either didn't like them or you still were like, you know what, these guys are good candidates, but we like Mike McCarthy better, at least interview them in person first and then go with Mike McCarthy. Again, it'd still be bullshit, but at least then you have more of a case of saying we hired an awesome group of candidates. Get the hell out of here.
You know, I think Mike's resume speaks for itself. Learned a lot through the process, but we're excited Mike McCarthy's the head coach.
Misty Matthews, Steelers.com. Coach, this is for you and Omar. You guys crossed paths with the Saints many years ago.
Oh, yeah, you crossed paths with the Saints many years ago. Yeah, I'm sure the connection there has nothing to do with it, right? Just like him being from Pennsylvania has nothing to do with it, right?
A short period of time. Is it surreal to be sitting next to each other in the capacity that you are today? And what do you remember about each other back then?
Another basic as fuck question.
We go first?
Yeah, in case you say something stupid.
Well, Omar's already said something stupid, and you're not calling him out on that, so.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it. That was 25 years ago, but I grew up a big Saints fan. So for me, that year was really special because that was the first year that the Saints ever won a playoff game. You know, Mike was the offensive coordinator, and it was an unbelievable year, and it was exciting, not only as someone that worked in the National Football League, but just as a fan growing up. But, you know, we had some good times, but what do I remember the most is just the hard work we put in. You know, I remember the attention to detail that this man to my right used to put into everything he did, and that still resonates with me today. But it was a good year, good experience, and can't believe it's been 25 years.
Hey, Mike, Jeff Hathorn with The Fan and KDK Radio. You mentioned defense wins championships. You got a lot of defensive guys up here. What is your defensive philosophy, and what are you looking for on that side of the ball from a coaching standpoint?
Well, I mean, as we build the staff, I mean, we definitely want to build off what's in place here. You know, I mean, just as a whole, you know, with this being the third organization that I've walked into the first day, I don't believe in the throw out the baby with the bathwater method. I believe in you know building off what's in place, and there's a lot here in place. I mean, it's the defense is system has been here since 1992. So, came here with, Coach Cowher and Don Capers. So always been a fan of it. Always felt it was the toughest one to compete against as an offensive coach. Part of the reason why I went to it in Green Bay. So, those are the things we're focused on right now. We're putting the staff together, but, ideally we want to keep the language the same. So I think, those are big decisions when you come in here, because when you got something that works the way it's worked here for so long, I think you should try to do everything you can to build off that.
Okay, so what he just said there is that he's not for the don't throw the baby out with the bathwater method, and he wants to pretty much keep the same 3-4 defensive scheme that the Steelers have run with since Bill Cowher came here. But in order to do that, you're also kind of morphing into more of a 4-3 as well. And, with the disguises and with the blitz packages and with Patrick Graham known for playing soft prevent defense down the final phases and giving up long touchdown passes as well, can you really say that you're not losing anything valuable here while just trying to keep faith while just trying to be faithful to what's worked in the past with the Steelers defensively. We'll see. But again, the fact that you hired Patrick Graham to be that sort of guy just seems counterintuitive.
Shelby Cassasi with WPXI. What qualities are most important to you as you form your coaching staff underneath you?
Oh, I mean, a number of them. I think, I have a philosophy of how to structure one. I think there's 4 areas that I've looked at. Number one, you got to have experts. You have the men that know the league. This league evolves. You definitely want to be on the front end of the cycle. You want to be on the back end. So that's important to have the expertise and experience at a certain level. I think it's important to look at the current coaching staff in place. A lot of good coaches that were here in place under Mike, and you have to take that into consideration because that's part of the fit and ability to move forward and make them part of it. If you feel like it fits. And the third one is you got to look at some of the young and new ideas out there that would fit the direction that you want to go with your team. So, and then you got to have them young dudes. You got to have the guys that grind. You got to have the grinders that are going to be there. And frankly, they came up the way Omar and I did. We didn't have the resources back then that you have today in computers. So you slept in the office back then. You did those things. I'm not looking for that now because of the resources you do have. But so staying true to that, that methodology is how I've done it. And at the end of the day, it has to fit together.
Okay, so basically he's saying he wants kind of like an even mix of expertise with guys who have been in the league long enough to provide almost like veteranship for the team as far as coordinators go, mixed in with some young and fresh ideas and some younger guys that can, in his words, grind it out. Okay, that's interesting, but if your methodology is based off of that, then why would you immediately go with Patrick Graham as your defensive coordinator just because he served under you for a little bit? I would think a guy like Al Harris would be a little bit better of a candidate with the Steelers because Patrick Graham has already been in the league long enough to have has already been in the league long enough, and his defenses, I mean, it speaks for itself. I know you can throw the lack of talent out there with the Giants and Raiders, but the fact that his defenses were middling to bottom tier, I think that just kind of speaks for itself when it goes with Mike McCarthy, and it's really just a reflection of the organization here that they just didn't take it seriously with the coaching hire, and that they just brought him in because they looked at the track record and what he did in the past. So, no, I'm sorry, Mike. I don't buy that.
Mike DeFabo with The Athletic. Mike, you bring a reputation of offensive football. I'm curious just how would you describe your philosophy on offense, and how has that evolved over time?
Well, I'm a believer in the tradition of the West Coast offense, and the first thing that always came to mind was the offense needs to be built to make the quarterback successful. For simplicity.
Okay, this is the part of the press that I still don't understand. If you go back to one of the first questions in the presser that he was asked almost right away if he wants Aaron Rodgers to be the quarterback. And he said, yes, he does. He would love to have Aaron Rodgers still be his quarterback. And yet you forward towards the end of the presser, Mike just basically contradicts himself. He says that he's a believer in the West Coast offense, but the thing with the West Coast offense is that it relies on less of an emphasis on deep shots down the field and more of high percentage, low reward, short passes with an athletic quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is not an athletic quarterback at this stage of his career. This is a 42-year-old guy who's going to be 43 this year. He's immobile in the pocket. He can't run like he used to. Yes, he can still chuck the ball 70 yards or so down the field, okay, his arm is always going to be there. But like I said, okay, it's almost a contradiction to his style of a West Coast type of offense when you're bringing in an over-the-hill Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. Okay, yes, you got the run game involved, but with Aaron Rodgers, him with all these dinks and dunks throws, just picking up short yardage and eating time off the clock, all right? That's not really the type. That's not the type of quarterback that Aaron Rodgers has always been known as. Okay, when you think of Aaron Rodgers, you think of his time in Green Bay, where his maneuverability in the pocket was elite. His arm strength was elite. His accuracy and his precision and decision making was elite. This guy was heralded as the best quarterback in the league for years. Okay, years, because of his playmaking and because of his decision making and because that he was able to, make all these impossible throws on a dime and basically look effortless. So the fact that you want to say that you're old school with the West Coast offense, it's almost a complete contradiction of that.
As it is, and that starts with running the football. I mean, you got to run the football, because if you don't run the football and you don't, tailor your protection schemes in the action pass game to the run game, obviously it's not going to affect the defense and have the benefits of what you're looking for. So, and then, in the way the quarterback's coached in that system, you want a more athletic player in that position, a man that can extend plays and play to the rhythm.
And there, right there, he said he wants a more athletic player. You're not getting that with Aaron Rodgers at this juncture of his career. I stand by my statement. What he said about wanting Aaron Rodgers back here completely contradicts his offensive philosophy here. Do you want an athletic quarterback or not? Because you ain't getting that with Aaron Rodgers. Unless you know for a fact that we're going to see Will Howard at some point this year, then that would make a little bit more sense. But the thing is, we don't know what we have in Will Howard yet. So again, what he said about wanting a more athletic player while also wanting Aaron Rodgers here in a West Coast offense makes no sense to me.
This one's for Omar, and then a follow-up for Mike. Omar, Mike's had an extensive time working with the quarterbacks. How much did that play a factor in bringing him on to be the head coach? Because I know, you've been making it a priority to find a long-term option at quarterback. And then, Mike, how has the quarterback position evolved, and what have you learned over the time of working all the way back with Joe Montana, but then also recently with Dak Prescott?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say, look, with everybody we talk to, the conversation of developing the next young.
Oh yeah, once again, with everybody we talk to. Oh yeah, those extensive interviews with Anthony Weaver, Mike McCarthy, and Brian Flores, right?
The next quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers was part of it. I think Mike's resume speaks for itself, who he's been around. But we're excited about working with Will. And
when are we going to see Will, Omar? When are we going to see him? Because if memory serves me right, you didn't even want Will Howard. You wanted Tyler Shuck, who's down in New Orleans, because because you took a look at what he's doing down with the Saints, and you grew up being a Saints fan, right? And you have those connections with the Saints, right? You wanted Tyler Shuck. You didn't want Will Howard here. So when exactly are we going to see Will Howard?
Yeah, I mean, that was a part of it.
Quarterback play, I think the obvious is the role changes, their ability to run. They're running, the quarterback runs. The called quarterback runs is probably the biggest thing that's changed in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and obviously, the rules, protecting them and making it possible. I mean, just the way you play defense. You got a 7-gap run scheme now. It has an 8th element to it because the quarterback can pull the ball. No different in the 8-gap, 9-gap scheme. So I mean, I think that is the biggest evolution that I think is obvious to all of us. But at the end of the day, to win these big games that are being played, in January, they still got to make throws from the pocket, and that's why the belief and the footwork and the training and all those things.
You have to make throws from the pocket, especially in January football. I'll hold you to that. You have to make throws from the pocket in January football, and footwork goes in that belief in what you said right there. The footwork and the athleticism. Once again, you are not getting that with Aaron Rodgers at this point of his career. Like I said, unless you know for a fact, some point in 2026, Will Howard's going to see some playing time. But you are not getting that with Aaron Rodgers, and you knew, and you answered one reporter at the beginning of this presser, yes, you want to see Aaron Rodgers here.
Mike, Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. When do you need to have an answer from Aaron by? And then second part of the question is, you took this year off. What's your first thoughts on this year's quarterback class coming out of college?
That's probably a better question for Omar, just because I'm just getting started on the draft process, and we'll dive into that, frankly, once we get past this coaching staff development. But yeah, timelines, we haven't discussed that yet.
Wait, you haven't discussed a timeline for when you want Aaron Rodgers to respond to you or when you want him back? You haven't discussed that yet? Again, that seems a little contradictory to me because you immediately answered right away that you would love Aaron Rodgers back here. So I just don't understand your answer for that. You have no problem in saying you want him back here, and yet you haven't discussed a timetable for him to be back here. I would think your answer to that would be right away, or at least something like that. I don't know. It just seems to make more sense to me that way. Once again, unless you know for a fact we're going to see Will Howard here, but hey, what the hell do I know, right?
Nick Farabaugh, Penn Live. Mike, your system has had lots of star receivers, guys like Jordy Nelson, C.E. Lamb. As you look at the current state of your wide receivers and your weaponry, adding in a tight end running back room, what stands out about it to you, and do you maybe need to add new types of receivers to fit what you want to do schematically?
Well, I just think like any coach, you're supposed to look at what you have and you look at the opportunity to develop. And, as far as the receiver position as a whole, we were at our best in Green Bay. The Jordy Nelson era is because all those guys work so well together. And, this game's about matchups. Your ability to put, your third receiver on the third corner or the third, and hopefully that's a favorable matchup, or move those guys around. And, you want your receivers to be able to play all three positions, because when you can have the flexibility of that, that goes back to the first statement about making a quarterback successful, because the quarterbacks are trained in conceptual, in conceptual development of how you throw the football. So that helps you with their footwork training, because, but if you got 900 plays just to beat every defense or beat every, that's very difficult on a quarterback. So if you truly want to play to the rhythm and time of the quarterback, your perimeter guys being able to play multiple positions is very important. So that'll be our approach with these guys, and I'm looking forward to getting started with them.
All right, thank you, guys. Give us a minute here. We're going to remove the table and do some.
Okay, so yeah, that's the press conference, the introductory press conference. Does this change my mindset of me wanting Mike McCarthy here? No, it does not. I still don't want him here. I still think it was a terrible hire. And I'm going to hold him to the same breath that I gave Mike Tomlin. Win a Super Bowl or get out of here. Those two guys that are sitting on either side of him, you guys did not take this this hire seriously at all. I mean, obviously, as a fan, I'm not going to openly root for them to lose, but I'm not going to sit down here and say necessarily that I think they have a strong chance of winning either. Basically, it's just another Mike Tomlin. It's another Mike Tomlin. It's as if Tomlin never left. So other than him showing that he genuinely wants to be here, which I applaud, I can't emphasize that enough. I applaud him genuinely wanting to be here. Other than that, this introductory press conference doesn't give me good vibes about this guy. Really doesn't. If anything, it's more than just basically confirming of what I suspected about him all along. But yeah, that's all I got. And let me know what you think down in the comments below.